Hey y'all, I'm Gretchen,
I'm Corey.
and we are Two Girls and Jesus. We are here to dig into week 4 of relationships with y'all. Our first verse this week is Romans 12:19. Corey, you want to go or you want me to go?
Well, I already let everybody know last week that this one was going to take us down a path.
Okay, well, you go first then.
All right, so I use the NIV version. Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord. So sometimes in the Bible, it'll give you a little side note, and it said, actually, maybe I looked it up. Anyway, when he originally said it was in the Old Testament under Deuteronomy 32:35. So I wrote that one down. Sorry for the noise. It says, oh, and I started with 34 because he says, have I not kept this in reserve and sealed it in my vaults? It is mine to avenge. I will repay. In due time, their foot will slip, their day of disaster is near, and their doom rushes upon them. Remember that Old Testament guy? He's kind of mean.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when I read that, I was like, wow, I mean, he spelled it out what was going to happen and told you to stop worrying about it. Let that go. It's not yours to deal with. It's his. And it's hard to do that, right? It's really
Yeah.
hard to just sit back. I know that I've done it a lot in my life in the preservation of others, not in the preservation of the person who I would love to have revenge against, but the people surrounding them, surrounding me. I don't want them to have to maybe feel the pain that I felt or know the truth of everything that's happening. And I've had to say, God's going to figure that out. He's going to handle them. But it's hard. It's really hard.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Extremely hard. I love how you referenced Old Testament there. That is so cool. Yeah. And you're right. Those Old Testament words hit different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I used the NLT, but I also referenced the New American Standard Bible. And that one says, never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. And I don't know, I was just in a nostalgia day, but this whole verse made me think of that movie, Double Jeopardy.
Yeah.
And Double Jeopardy is a real law on the books. And it just simply states that a person can't be tried for the same crime twice. If they were found guilty or not guilty, it doesn't matter if new evidence surfaces, if new witnesses come forward. It doesn't matter if you yourself confess to the crime. If you are found not guilty, there's nothing they can do about it. Okay.
Yeah.
And it just made me think God is going to take his vengeance, he will avenge his people. And it made me wonder if we seek retribution, if we seek revenge, in our own human way, do we get in the way of God's vengeance? Like,
Yeah. It probably changes it.
I would think it does. Because, we get in God's way all the time. We prolong things, we keep good things from happening to us because we're in the way trying to fix things, thinking God needs our help, right? Um, and it made me think of when David was running and hiding in the wilderness from Saul. Saul was seeking to kill him because, God took his anointing off of him. He had appointed David to be king of Israel, and Saul was jealous. He didn't want to lose everything that he had. So David's running and hiding from him, and he had two opportunities, perfect opportunities to kill Saul, and he didn't do it. He said, who am I to kill God's anointed? Because Saul was still king at that time. Who am I to kill God's anointed? And I wonder if if David had taken that revenge, if David had killed Saul, how would that have changed history?
Yeah.
And it's just so cool to think about. I don't have to do that. I don't have to get my soul all mixed up in this thing that this person did to me. I can just sit back and relax and go on about my life. I'm probably hurt. I probably am. I'm going to work through that hurt, me and Jesus, but I don't have to get my hands dirty. God's going to handle that. Now, I may never get to see on this side of heaven how God handled it. But like you said that time, and it has just blown my mind ever since, God sees the whole person, not just the act. We just see the act. God sees the whole person, and He knows exactly the revenge to take on that person. He knows how to hold that person accountable for what they did to you.
That's what we're hoping for, right? Because when we let something go and we say karma's going to get them, or whatever you want to say, this tells us that God's going to take care of it. But whatever you want to say, when you just let something go, you truly have to let that go, or it'll just eat you up inside. I know I have allowed things to play over and over in my mind and take control of every thought of an entire day, an entire week, because I'm so consumed with wanting someone to pay for what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to refuse to allow that to happen. When those thoughts come to my mind, now I have this verse to turn back to remind myself God actually said it more than once. He's going to take care of it.
Right. And I'm not correcting you here because I know a lot of people use the word karma just for lack of better words, but
Right.
karma is actually a very evil thing. It is not of God.
I agree. It's just a word that people use.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And karma says that if you're a good person, then good things are going to happen to you, right? And we know as followers of Jesus, that's not always true. Matter of fact, sometimes we are persecuted because we are followers of Jesus.
Right.
So I used to use that word all the time until I really dug into it, and I'm like, that's kind of scaring me right there. Reap what you sow.
Right.
That's what the Bible, of course, says. But in my human brain, it's so much easier to say karma, than reap what you sow. But rabbit hole again. I don't know why I went there. Another thing about this verse that I wanted to point out, and I'm not saying this that everyone else does it. This is me, okay? Is that when I go to take revenge, it's not to like you hurt my heart, so I'm going to hurt your heart. Okay. It's not for me. It's not so much that. It is, I'm fixing to show you what you've done to me by doing it to you. Okay. Or at least parallel what you did to me to you. Right.
Try to make them feel the same pain.
Right. At least just a portion of what they made me feel. Okay. But what I realized is that when I did that, when I acted in that way, it caused me to sin.
Yeah.
Completely, put me getting my soul all junked up, getting my heart posture in the wrong place. I don't know of a way you can seek revenge on someone and not sin yourself. And I tell my students at school all the time when they have a bad reaction, emotional or physical reaction to something that someone else did, I'm like, all people see is your reaction. They don't see what that person did that caused it. All they see is your reaction. That's why you're in trouble right now, because of how you reacted. Nobody is saying what they said or did is okay. Nobody is saying that. But you standing up and throwing a chair across the lunchroom got everybody's attention, and that's all we saw.
Yeah.
It doesn't negate what they did. You're not in trouble because of what they did. You're in trouble about how you reacted. And I just applied that to this verse, and I'm like, wow, I just need to take my own advice sometimes. I mean, I do really good things for these kids at school. I wish I could just do it for myself, take that advice for myself. You have anything else for this one?
No, I think I threw it all out there in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about this one verse and never get to like a finality on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The next verse for me, Proverbs 27:17, was where I've got the pages and pages because I did unnecessary research, but it had to make sense to me, right?
Let
So
me
that
start it
verse,
out then.
okay.
Start for us. Yeah.
So Proverbs 27:17, I use the NLT. As iron sharpens iron, so a friend sharpens a friend. I also use the Good News translation, and it says, people learn from one another just as iron sharpens iron. And I've heard this verse a lot throughout my life, but I've never dug into it. I'm like, okay, I get a piece of metal, sharpens another piece of metal. Okay, whatever. But when I started digging into it, Corey, iron doesn't sharpen iron.
Okay. So
A
where's the
piece of,
sound come from?
okay. Oh, it's a rabbit hole. Oh, I'm gonna take us there. I am gonna take us there because you asked the question. Okay, so here we go. Back in biblical days, King Solomon wrote this proverb. Okay, we know that King Solomon built the temple, right? Back in that day, iron was used for tools, weapons, and construction primarily. So we've got iron that was used in the building of the temple. We've got iron, in what book is it? Is it Ephesians, where it talks about God's armor, the breastplate of righteousness? That would have been made from iron. The nails that pierced Jesus's hands would have been made from iron. Okay. But I can't just take a raw piece of iron and let's just say I have a nail. I've heated this iron and formed, to unimaginable degrees of heat. Okay. It takes a lot of heat to form iron. So I've heated it up and I've formed it into the shape of a nail. And now I've got to sharpen that point of the nail, right? I can't just take another piece of iron and sharpen that into a nail. Iron only forms when heat is applied. You can only mold it when heat is applied to it. Okay. It's only malleable when you apply heat, astronomic heat. Okay. But what they would do is they didn't have different types of metals just at their disposal, right? So what they would do is they would heat another piece of iron and they would shape that piece of iron into what we recognize nowadays as a file. And that's what they would use to sharpen the pieces of iron that they needed to sharpen. So, but the file iron, the textured iron, okay, also has to be heated to unimaginable degrees for them to form it into that shape or, into that texture rather. So, how does all of that relate to friendships? And I sat there and I'm like, well, if I've got a file, okay, that was gonna sharpen me. I'm just a dull piece of iron. I haven't been sharpened yet. Or maybe I have, and I've been through some stuff and I'm dull now. Okay. This friend comes along who is a textured piece of iron and she's sharpening me or he's sharpening me. That friend's been through some stuff too. You know, That friend's been through the heat too. And that friend, because of what that friend has been through, that friend is uniquely qualified, just like that piece of iron was uniquely designed to sharpen my dull edge. Okay. That friend is uniquely qualified to help me walk through whatever I've been through. That friend, you know, might see me making some really stupid decisions, in which I'm sure all of you have seen me do, you know, and y'all are ringing my phone, knocking on my door, knocking me in the head. What are you doing? We are not doing this. Do you know what I mean? Do you see how I connected that? And I was like, wow, this is so good.
It kind of ties into what I said about it, which was that I feel like this verse is touching on the importance of being around mature Christians, not judgmental Christians, um, people who have maybe been through some things or understand the need for grace.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying of, somebody knocking you on the head, if it's just some loser saying it to you, you're not going to take it with anything, right? But if
Right.
it's somebody that's a mature Christian, somebody that you maybe look up to or you at least respect their opinion, you're going to listen better. And so that's how I played it into my mind, was the maturity of the Christian. And another thing that I wrote down, and I don't know why I wrote this, but I said, these people will remind you to take action or not take action based on his word and not based on our emotions.
Yes. Yes, that is
So,
good stuff right there. Because our emotions, what I have to continually remind myself about my feelings and my emotions is that is what, when we're talking about dealing with other people, that is what they made me feel. That may not have been their intention. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
that's how it made me feel. And if I react off of those emotions or those feelings, 97% of the time, I get it wrong. That was never their intention. They weren't even thinking about me when they said that or when they did that.
right.
But it was in my presence, and so my feelings and my emotions are lying to me, you know, and if I react, then that just causes a whole nother ball of mess, you know. And something else that I wrote here was that then talking about the file, it's a whole different texture has to be used to sharpen iron. So this tells me that my friends, like you were saying, should be wise. They are you probably different from me. Um, alike but different in different ways, other ways, and strong enough to tell me the hard things. And I just liken that in my head to I'm over here because I'm dull. I'm either brand new or I've been used over and over again, and I'm dull and I need sharpening. And that person has to bring something to the table. And this goes along with what you were saying. They have to bring something to the table that makes me sit and listen to what they've been through.
Yeah.
And because if I'm not going to listen to them, if they're not, that wise person, that mature Christian, I'm not going to listen because what they have to tell me in my head, I'm like, I already know that. I already know that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, going through that fire to get formed into, that file like texture, that had to be some hard stuff.
Yeah.
So now I can relate what you've been through to what I'm currently going through. I
And
just thought that was awesome.
different perspectives are important also.
Absolutely, they
Don't
are.
necessarily go to the person who you know is going to tell you what you want to hear.
Coddle you. Exactly. Exactly. You're so right about that. But a lot of times that's often what we do because that's what we want to hear. We
Right.
want to hear that those people are terrible for that. You know,
Yes.
they should have never said that. You know, they should have never done that. They should have, you know, treated you like the queen you are, you know. At least I do. I that's usually what I seek, being very
Well,
vulnerable.
I think that's, I think that's very natural thing to do, right? Especially when you just want validation.
Mhm.
Um, but as we mature and we ourselves get different perspectives, and maybe at the moment we didn't get it, but a little while later in our thoughts, we start to understand. And it is important to have people that you can talk to help you understand and form new opinions. And I don't know.
Yeah. And that's why I always have to keep in the forefront of my mind that my feelings are not facts. You know,
Yeah.
they're just not facts. They're not as much as I want them to be, maybe in that moment. They're just not. It requires a conversation, which I think one of our upcoming verses has something to do about a conversation. The next verse, you have anything else for this one?
No.
No? The next verse is First Corinthians 13:4-8. You want to do this one?
Well, it's a long one, and pretty much everybody has probably heard this in their lifetime.
Right, yeah.
Um, the New King James Version is the one that I did just because I don't know. I like the way it's written.
Yeah.
Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up. Does not behave rudely. Does not seek its own. Is not provoked. Thinks no evil. Does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in truth. Bears all things. Believes all things. Hopes all things. Endures all things. Love never fails, but whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. I think that the entire chapter 13 should be a requirement probably around the middle school age, then again in the high school age, then again on the college age, and definitely get to know and be intimate with this entire chapter before you enter into marriage. Because this is a tutorial on how to love someone. And I mean, I don't really know what else to say about it other than everything is written right in that chapter to tell you how to love everyone, not just your, you know, you hear this in weddings all the time, right?
Right. Yeah, I wrote that too. You hear this in weddings all the time.
But it's how to love everyone. And so that's what I got from this very long portion.
Okay, well, let me just share what I've got. This verse makes me mad. I do not like this verse. I don't like it at all. Never have. You know why? Because I have seen it recited at wedding after wedding after wedding after wedding after wedding. So when I read this verse, that's the lens that I use when I read it. I always think of romantic love. And I've never been loved like that ever by any man. Neither of my two husbands or my fiance was I loved like that. And so for me, all I hear when I read that verse is wah 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 blah 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 blah. That's all I hear when I read that verse. And well, let me say used to hear. I don't anymore. Used to. Um, but several years ago, I think it was 2020, actually, in January, I prayed for God to give me a word for the year, just one word for the year. And I dive in looking for verses that relate to that word and try my best to apply them to my life throughout that year. And the word that he gave me that year was expect. And I'm like, God, I don't know why you giving that word to me, because you know me better than I know myself. And I learned a long time ago not to expect anything from anybody, because you get let down by everything and everybody. I wasn't real happy with getting that word, but I said, okay, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to dive in and I'm going to find and I'm going to talk to people about this word. And I was talking to a friend of mine. His name is Terry. He is a truck driver, or he was at the time. He's not anymore. And so if he got bored when he was driving, he would usually call me. It was usually late at night if he had an overnight run he had to do. It's summertime. We were out of school, so it wasn't summertime, but we were out of school during that year. And I started talking to him about that word, and somehow we came around to that verse. I can't tell you how, but we did. And he's just reciting it because he's driving his truck and he's just reciting it, not word for word, but pretty close.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I hate that verse. And he was like, Gresham, he said that verse is not just how you should love other people. It is how you should expect other people to love you. And I was like, but I don't expect things. Like, I don't expect anything. And he's like, but you should. Like, you can't love somebody like this unless you're being loved that way. And he said, it's not just about husbands and wives. It's, your siblings, it's your friends, it's your parents. Just like what you were saying, everyone should love you that way. And if they don't need to be a part of your life. And you'll still have love for them, but you just need to love them from over there. And I was like, wow. And I read that verse completely different now. And what verse was it last week that we did that I referenced, that First John that says God is love?
Yeah.
If God is love, then all who follow God live in love. And that is how we should love everybody, but is also how we should expect to be loved by them. And it's not just because we've heard it in a gazillion weddings. It's not exclusive to that kind of love. But for many, many years, for me, it was. And I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. But I do now.
I'm glad you changed your mind, your
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. And I was really thankful for that word, that expect word, for a lot of different reasons, but that was the biggest one. You have anything else for this one?
No.
All right.
I
Well,
like that we're moving back into James for our final verse.
I know. Why don't you take this one?
I use the NIV. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. You know, those times when people say, if you could go back to your 20-year-old self, if you could go back to your teenage self, what would you tell yourself? This verse is what I would tell myself.
Oh, wow.
When you think that you're just all alone, nobody's there to help you, when you're just, I don't know, desperate for something, for someone, for love, for answers, and you just don't understand that, which I didn't. I mean, I didn't for until recently. I didn't understand how deep God's love is for us, and that He really is there for us to talk to go to with questions, to ask Him to help you see the differences in people who are there for you and who are there against you. I mean, just so many things in life. If I would have realized all I had to do was turn to Him, and He was going to be there for me. what would have been easier. Because I wouldn't change the majority of my life, right? Because I wouldn't
Right.
have my girls. There are a lot of reasons that I've been through things that I've been through. How much easier would that path have looked if I would have understood with my younger self what was available to me?
Yeah.
Because it's easy for somebody to say, well, you're saved. If you just do this, if you just do that, then you're going to go to heaven. Some days I don't care about getting to heaven. I just want to get through today.
Right.
And these
Yeah.
words, they tell you he's there for you
Yeah.
today. He's there to give you wisdom. He's there to help you through everything. So that's what I got.
Wow, that's good stuff, Corey.
Well, that's not even what I wrote down. That's just what came to my head.
Yeah.
What I
Because you
wrote
write
down
it down.
was what I wrote down and highlighted was I was definitely in need of his help, but I also felt that I had too many faults for him to have favor on me.
Mm,
And I think that's important because I think a lot of us feel that way. Why would he help me?
yeah.
Because he said he's there
Yeah.
for us for everything. Just got to go to him.
Yeah. You're so right. I of course used the NLT. And it says, if you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. And I also looked up the easy version, and it said, but maybe you need to know how to be wise. Then ask God to help you. He is ready to give everyone what they need. And he never says that it is wrong to ask. And I have that highlighted. I highlighted it in yellow, which I rarely do in our digs, but I did that because I read it and I wrote it, but I didn't realize it. Okay. So remember that. It was written down, but I didn't really see it. Okay. And so when I start writing my thoughts, I'm like, I'm gonna have to pray about this one because I don't see how this has anything to do with relationships. I don't get it. And I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, God said it. And I have a relationship with God. I have a relationship with Jesus. And he said it. So yeah, it has something to do with relationships. And then God just downloaded. He was like, and Missy, it has something to do with human relationships too. And you struggle with this. So listen up. And so he told me to go back and read the versions again. And I did. And I was like, whoa. And that's when I got my little highlighter out and I highlighted, and he never says that it is wrong to ask. Because in every relationship that I have that I do not deem as safe, and it's not just safe, it is uber safe. Like it is the safest of the safe. Like these people have proven that no matter what I do, they're still going to love me and be there for me. That I'm not going to tell them how I feel about something and they're going to make me go away or they're going to go away. And there's not very many people I have like that in my life, only a few. God very plainly said to me that I have to start asking people that I'm in relationships with for what I need from them. Because my struggle is I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to voice my feelings because you're going to make me go away. You're going to go away. It's going to cause an argument. You're going to be mad at me. And then I'm going to have to justify, I'm going to have to validate my own feelings. And as an adult, I just refuse to do that anymore. As a child, I tried to validate why I felt the way that I felt to the people that made me feel that way. And number one, I never got through to them. And number two, all it did was cause arguments and fights, you know? I have to, whether I feel safe and secure or not, if someone is doing something or not doing something, and I need them to do something so that I feel, connected or safe in this relationship, no matter what the relationship is, I have to ask for it. I have to tell them what I need. And if they make me go away, or if they go away from me, that's okay. I don't need them in my life anyway.
Yeah.
And this was just mind blowing to me because you remember how you said earlier that you get in your head and it's like you have this one thought all day long?
Yeah.
Because someone else, another human, was not validating the way I felt. I tried to validate it for myself. And, so it's this constant spiraling thoughts. You end up in one place and you end somewhere completely different, a whole lot worse than where you started, right? At least I do. And how could they say that? How could they do that? How could they just dismiss me and my feelings like that? They're the ones that made me feel this way. Um, but if I never voice that in a calm manner, and whether they receive it or not, okay, I have to say it out loud because I can't just expect them to know. And that's what I adopted in my adult life. That is how I have lived my adult life because of how I was raised, you know? And not that I had bad parents, I didn't, but I know now as an adult they were doing the best they could with what they had to choose from. But those choices were very detrimental to me emotionally and mentally. And so I just learned to never say how I felt. I learned to never say how something bothered me, how I didn't like something wasn't okay with me. I learned to never say it. And I adopted that as an adult. And that is now that I'm saying that out loud to all of you, that's probably where I adopted not to expect anything from anybody, you know? Because if I don't have expectations of people, then they'll never let me down, you know? And, but if I don't say it, then those thoughts start spiraling because I'm trying to validate my own feelings, rationalize my own feelings, all the while just getting more angry at them.
Right. And letting it eat you up inside more and more.
Yes. So this was a very eye-opening verse for me. It was a very hard verse for me because I thought about it for days and days and days after, and not necessarily in a good way. I mean, I was kind of beating myself up because of what I didn't do for myself. You know, God says right here, it's never wrong to ask. But somehow my brain over the years, through all of the stuff, my brain had told me it was wrong to ask. So I was so thankful that God sent me back to that to reread it because I didn't see it the first time. And I was having a really hard time connecting this to just relationships in general.
Um, so I ended mine with saying, I can't go backwards, but I can try my best to ask God for wisdom and decisions for my life here forward. I will also do my best to share this verse with people along my path who need this in their lives.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you were able to, by revisiting it, by looking at the different verses, you were able to apply it to you now so that it can help you forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've already started implementing it. And I'm gonna say it's really hard. It's not, I have to talk myself into it. I have to talk myself down from the ledge to get it to come out of my mouth, you know. But I haven't had a bad reaction yet.
Good.
I've had some thoughtful conversations, but not necessarily a bad reaction. And if somebody is going to react badly because you have a feeling or a thought or you need something from them, if they have a bad reaction to that, they are not your people. Simple as that. And if
Yeah.
they want to walk, let them walk. If they want to make you go away, let them go home, go just stay in your bubble.
It's time for you to speak up for yourself.
It really is.
because you deserve to be loved the way that that verse talked about.
Thank you. I do deserve that.
You do. And all these verses are tying together. This is why it's all under relationships, right?
Yeah.
Because it's all one verse speaks to another, just like our relationships in our lives, right? I mean,
Right.
it takes a long time to get from here to there. And like I said, a lot of this is just this is your tutorial.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that I have realized digging in to these relationship verses is, God has been speaking to me a lot about the different verses. And Corey, there are so many people out there hurting right now from relationships of all different levels. They are really, really hurting and they don't know what to do with that. If someone had given me these verses 30 years ago when DJ was killed, I would have handled the next 5 years a whole lot differently. Whole lot differently.
Yeah.
Wow. And I just, people are hurting. And I really hope that they take the time to dig through these verses with us. So with
Hopefully.
that being said, y'all do all the stuff on the YouTube and the Spotify, the TikTok, the Lemon8, the Threads, Instagram. Ring the bells, subscribe, like, share, squeeze lemons, heart. What else do people do?
I think you've got it down pretty good now.
Yeah,
I mean, it's only taken a few weeks, just a few
right.
weeks.
Just a few. Just a few. What were you going to say, though? I cut you off. I apologize for
Oh,
that.
I have no idea.
Okay.
It was obviously not important. Probably something that I was going to say again that I had already said.
Okay. Well, I apologize for that. But I am really, really loving this. Really loving the relationships.
Me too. I wasn't sure how we would be able to separate and get the word relationship away from husband wife, but it's been pretty easy actually.
Yeah, it has. And the next week coming up, we have one that even deals with work relationships.
Yeah.
And that was so cool to me. It was so cool to me.
Yeah. Oh, it's almost your summer. How's this month winding down?
Oh my gosh, I am so tired. I can't hardly even breathe. But I have this week and then next week. Our last day with the students is Wednesday, so a week from today. And then the teacher's last day is Friday. And I might not even get out of my bed or off my couch Saturday after that. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.